Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a young woman must escape from a maniac when she is abducted on her birthday. So, what would you wish for if it was your birthday? Because I wish I wasn't, trapped inside the birthday box.
I got a Game Boy for my 6th birthday. It was wrapped in a nice little white box with a red ribbon. It was from my out-of-state uncle, the only person who always got me something. My mother hadn't gotten me anything, but she told me we had some batteries out in the car trunk that I could use. Given how Game Boys chew through batteries, I figured I might as well stock up. So I got my Game Boy, crawled into the trunk of the car, and started looking for batteries. I found a whole bunch of them. Some used, some not. I ended up cozying up next to an old sleeping bag and playing my game right then and there. There was this strangely comforting smell of gasoline and freshly cut grass that lulled me into a gleeful comfort. I didn't want to be in the house anyway. It could get so dreary watching my mom sit by the kitchen table doing nothing. She was rarely, if ever, responsive. As I felt a few raindrops on my bare knees, I realized there were clouds brewing above. So I shut myself in the trunk, listening to the rain and playing my game. I had one of those flashlight extensions, so I could stay there forever. Except I couldn't. I hadn't realized that car trunks lock themselves when shut. I was stuck in there, and my mom wasn't helping me anytime soon. We lived in a small home in an isolated part of town, where most other houses were either abandoned or far off, so no one could hear me scream. Eventually, the batteries ran dry. Even the backups. And as the cheerful Wario Land theme music died, it was just me, stuck in the dark, flailing helplessly to get out. It took 18 hours before someone passing by could hear me. When I was finally let out, CPS took me away and placed me with my uncle. My mother, who was diagnosed with clinical apathy, has never really been a part of my life since. So as you can imagine, I have a bit of a complicated past when it comes to confined spaces and birthdays, but I still consider myself having a happy childhood. My uncle was amazing, and he cared for me more than my mother ever did. I did well in school, I made many friends, and I did well as a point guard on the high school basketball team. You don't have to be tall to be a good point guard. I moved up to Morgantown and got my master's in business administration from John Chambers College. Ever since, I've been working hard and staying out of trouble. I've made myself quite comfortable. Still don't celebrate my birthday, though. That brings up a lot of emotions. A few years ago, I got a letter informing me that my mother had passed. I was asked to come back home to Juniper to collect her things and sign the papers in person. So, one late September afternoon, I took a trip down memory lane to say goodbye to that chapter of my childhood, once and for all. But something didn't feel right. When I arrived later in the day, the house was in shambles. It had been abandoned for years. And there was no one there to greet me. It was just me, standing in an overgrown yard listening to the crickets waking up. A one-story home with every window broken, where the white paint had peeled so much it looked like the yard was covered in dandruff. Then, someone put a bag over my head. It all went black. When I woke up, I was in immediate discomfort. My muscles ached and my back was arched in an awkward fetal position. I had this terrible urge to stretch and straighten out, but I couldn't. I was confined. I could barely move. All I could feel was rough-hewn wood, and all I could smell was vinegar and dirt. It was so strong it made my eyes tear up. I didn't understand what was going on. I fought, twisted, pushed, and screamed. Neither the walls, the ceiling, or the floor gave an inch. I got splinters all over my arms and legs. It was so oppressively dark that I couldn't even see my hands. It was also getting warmer, and I didn't even realize I was hyperventilating until I heard my own breathing. I could feel the salt of my sweat dripping into my eyes and my clothes sticking to my skin, like wearing a nylon shirt in the rain. There were these wildly irrational, panicked thoughts that came to me all at once. But the first and foremost was the feeling that maybe I never got out of that car trunk all those years ago. Maybe all of this had been a hallucination. Maybe I was still that 6-year-old kid, trying to find my way out, dreaming of the world outside. Hell, maybe my Game Boy was still around. I snapped to attention. There were footsteps and they were coming closer. There was an echo. I was somewhere enclosed and spacious. Someone outside was walking on concrete.
Have I got a treat for you, birthday girl?
Rasped a whiskey-torn old voice.
Have I got a treat for you?
A man, possibly middle-aged, maybe older. I seized up as I slowly came to realize I'd been abducted. I couldn't think of a reason for someone to lock me in an actual box other than some terrible, nefarious purpose. 1,000 troubling thoughts passed through my mind at once. Everything from being sold to tortured. I held my breath.
I'm sure you'll enjoy this.
He continued.
I'm sure you will be pleased.
I don't know what I was thinking. I started hitting the walls, screaming to be let out. I screamed and begged and threatened and cried, and I was getting so frustrated I couldn't even hear him responding. The tears wouldn't stop. Finally, there was a loud bang. A hammer coming down on the box and something piercing my skin. He'd hammered a nail in to make a point, and it had been close enough to scrape my knee.
Don't be so emotional,
Said the man.
It would make things easier if you weren't so emotional.
I quieted down, but I couldn't slow my breathing. There wasn't enough air in the world to fill my lungs, it seemed. The man outside waited patiently, then left the room with a jaunty whistling.
Beautiful birthday girl.
He said as he left the room.
Beautiful, perfect birthday girl.
There was a loud chunk as a metal door slid shut. I thought back on that day where I'd been locked in that trunk. I thought about the smells and sensations. Gasoline and fresh-cut grass. Now, there was vinegar and musty wood. A bit of mold, perhaps. Wherever I was, it was old. I decided I needed to take control. There would be no one passing by to help me this time. I had to be proactive, even if everything in me screamed to just curl up into a ball and weep. I had to do something. I forced myself to map everything in my immediate environment, to figure out if there was something I could use. I slowed my breathing and carefully ran my hands across the surface of the box. I calculated that it was about 3 feet across and an almost perfect square. There was a slight gap in between some of the planks, but there was another layer of wood outside. It also seemed like the entire box had some sort of fabric wrapped around it, as I couldn't hear wood scraping whenever I shifted the box. It was a smooth fabric. Cotton, maybe? I also realized that I'd been out cold for at least 12 hours. My birthday had been a day off, so if he was congratulating me, I must have been out long enough for midnight to pass. You can get pretty far in 12 hours, so there was no way for me to know how far he'd taken me. My fingers brushed against something smooth. My Game Boy? No. My cell phone. I came to realize that I still had all my belongings. My car keys, my cell phone, my jacket. I took off my jacket and propped it up to relieve my back a bit. Then I got my cell phone out. The brightness blinded me. It took me several minutes just to adjust my eyes, and even then they were still getting watery. I wiped them over and over until I could finally see something. The battery was at about 34%. Not great, but serviceable. I dialed the emergency services immediately, but I couldn't get through. There was no signal, no internet connection. We were off the grid. Way off the grid. Maybe underground? I tried lying on my back to kick the wall out, but I just couldn't get enough momentum. The planks were rough, but I couldn't get them to buckle. The only side I wasn't entirely sure of was the floor. I tried standing and pushing myself upwards, but nothing moved. I closed my phone to save on battery and kept exploring the rigidity of the box. I was at it for more than an hour, just pushing myself against the planks. Still, nothing budged, but I refused to stop trying. I took a breather when I suddenly heard the door open again. It was pretty far off, and I could hear echoing footsteps coming my way. Someone coughing, clearing their throat. It sounded like he was smoking.
All right, birthday girl.
He sighed.
Time to get started.
There was a loud banging again, but not on my box. And something nearby, another wooden surface. Something across from me. Another box?
Let me know when you're ready.
He continued.
I'm right outside.
Ready for what? I yelled back. What are you talking about? There was no response. Instead, he just walked away, closing the large door behind him. Moments later, there was a scream. A young woman. It was muffled, but clear and close by. I shifted around in my box to come closer, only to realize our boxes were literally next to one another. There were two of us. Hello? I called out. Hello, who are you?
What's going on?
She called back.
Who are you?
We're trapped, I said. We're both trapped. I tried to explain to her what I knew. I had her confirm everything on her end, that she was also in a box, roughly 3 feet across, that she also had a phone, but no service or internet connection. We smelled the same things, saw the same things, and had both been taken suddenly and in the last 24 hours. I got so wrapped up in it that I barely remembered to ask anything about her as a person. Finally, she learned my name, and I came to know her as Lorette, or Lori for short. He came in to talk to me a couple of times. I sighed. He keeps calling me birthday girl.
Maybe he was, talking to me?
Said Lori.
It's my birthday.
Mine too, I said. That can't be a coincidence. It was eerie, but it didn't explain anything. We tried to find more commonalities. I was 28 at the time. Lori was 21. We were both women, but we had wildly different backgrounds. She had a family with 3 sisters and 2 brothers. I'd been alone with my uncle. She went to public school. I'd had a private tutor. My hair was black. Hers was brown. My eyes were brown. Hers were green. We had basically nothing in common except for our birthday. And it didn't lead us anywhere. We stayed in there for hours. At first, I'd felt that tinge of hope, knowing someone might help me, that we could help each other. But now it was growing increasingly clear that this just meant we were stuck together. 2 victims, rather than 1. Lori wasn't about to give up. While I'd resigned myself to preserving my energy, she was still in denial. She was kicking, punching, and pushing against the planks, hoping something would give way. Of course it didn't. But she stopped for a second.
There's something in the cracks.
She said.
Some, insulation. I got short nails, I can't.
I brought out my phone and checked. And yes, looking into the spaces between the planks, I could see some kind of white insulation. A piece of it was poking out just far enough for me to reach it. I pulled out strips from a towel, drenched in some sort of vinegar. I conveyed the information to Lori, who tried to make sense of it.
Maybe he's, covering up the smell?
She said.
If we die in here, vinegar can soak some of that up.
So we're in for the long haul. Days, maybe weeks.
Oh my God.
Lori started weeping. I could hear her rocking back and forth, her box shifting slightly. But there was another sound as she did. A rumbling. A deep, dark rumbling. I wrapped my jacket around me like a blanket. It was getting cold, and I had to preserve my energy. You get exhausted quicker in the cold. At some point, Lori and I were just leaning against our boxes back to back, talking about whatever came to mind. Whatever made us remember that we were in this together, and that we weren't alone. The man hadn't come back for several hours, but it might as well have been days. I talked about my uncle, my job, my mother, anything that crossed my thoughts. Lori told me about her cats, and how she was saving up for a college degree. We were just thinking out loud. And when the words ran dry, we fell quiet. I felt like I'd known her all my life.
There's no water.
Lori sighed.
Without water, we won't last long. I'm already thirsty.
Try not to think about it, I said. Try to think of something else. Like an itch.
Great. Now I'm itchy and thirsty.
She got a laugh out of me. An honest-to-God laugh. Suddenly, the door opened. Our laughter died, and the footsteps came closer. I heard a deep inhale, followed by a ripe cough. Definitely a smoker. He stopped just ahead of us, saying nothing. I decided to just wait and listen. There could be something out there. A hint.
You're not feeling up to it, birthday girl. You're not enjoying your present.
The raspy voice asked.
I'm sorry. I'll do better next time.
Lori couldn't help herself. I could hear her shifting in her box. I don't want anything from you. I want nothing, and you have to release me. I could hear the man turn around. I got the impression that he'd been facing away from us. Strange.
Excuse me.
He said, his voice shifting.
I wasn't talking to you.
Then listen to me, I said. She's right. You have to let us out. There was a loud bang against the side of the box. He kept hammering at it over and over again. Despite several layers of planks and insulation, the sound was deafening. I covered my ears, closed my eyes, and waited for it to be over. Seconds later, he was done. I could hear him panting and coughing.
Shut up!
He yelled.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut your pretty mouths when I'm talking to her!
A chill crawled up my spine. If he wasn't talking to either of us, there was someone else in the room. I could hear a groaning noise, like metal being bent from pressure. Then a thump. A big, fat footstep slapping against concrete. I held my breath, trying to paint a picture in my mind. I couldn't make anything of it. I'd never heard anything like it.
There we go, birthday girl.
The man said.
There we go. Nice and easy.
I could feel the pressure shift as something large came down, slamming into the box next to me. Something large that moved with great effort. But as Lori started screaming, it seemed to pick up speed. It got angry. Or excited. I could hear creaking wood and snapping nails as Lori's box was being torn open plank by plank. And the more she screamed, the angrier it seemed to get. The air shifted as her screams were flung high into the air. Both she and the box were hoisted at least 15, maybe 20 feet up. Her screams turned shrill as they bounced off the concrete walls. Planks breaking, fabrics torn. And now I could hear her terrified shriek as clear as day. She was out of the box. And whatever was on the other side made her cry like a cornered animal. There was a loud crunch, like massive teeth biting into a ripe apple. And Lori fell silent. I sat there, shaking. I tried not to breathe or imagine what was happening outside. I tried my best to be anywhere else. And for the first time in my life, I wished and begged to be back in the trunk of that car, playing my Game Boy. I could hear things falling against the concrete. Planks, nails, and something wet. Chunks.
There, birthday girl.
He shushed.
Aren't you gonna open your other gift?
Another groaning noise. More chunks falling from above. Bones breaking, splashes of liquid.
All right, I'll be back in a bit. Love you, birthday girl.
There was a kissing noise, followed by footsteps. Wet footsteps. And he whistled a jaunty tune all the way out the door. I had 3 minds inside my head at that moment. One mind wanted to scream and bash myself bloody against the walls. Another mind wanted to curl into a ball and cry. But in the back of my thoughts, there was a little mind left. It had grown there for years, festering from a wound back from when I was locked in that trunk as a kid. And that third mind was telling me to listen. It was telling me that no one was coming to save me. And it was telling me I had to keep trying. So I listened. There were still little things falling from above. But what I was just now realizing was that the floor seemed further down. There was either a hole next to me, or my box was elevated. I T-ried, shifting back and forth. The box barely moved. I decided on a direction and kept shifting that way, inch by inch, throwing myself against the side of the box. Finally, there was a stop. Some kind of threshold. That first mind was screaming at me to panic. to kick and scream. That other mind was telling me to give up, but that third mind just kept telling me to stay calm and to try. It could be a short drop that would just put me on the floor and change nothing. It could be a long drop, killing me. Or maybe something I couldn't even imagine. So I threw myself against the threshold, and I threw myself at it again. And again. This time the trunk would pop open. It had to. There was a slight shift as I felt the box clear the threshold, and as I pushed further, I could feel that there was no more ground to support me. The further I pushed, the more it gave way. I was balancing on an edge. I could feel it. I could lean back, staying upright. Or I could push forward and tip myself off a cliff. And while two voices were screaming at me to wait, it was that third voice that came through the loudest. And it was telling me to fall off that damn cliff. So I fell. The world turned on its head, and I felt my stomach rise to my throat. It all came to a stop with a violent crash, and I could feel the dimensions of the box shift. It was no longer a perfect square. Something was broken. I could feel one of the walls giving way. I started kicking. I kicked and kicked and kicked. Either my legs would give or the wall. And the way the planks were bending, I was betting it all on my legs holding for just a little longer. And suddenly there was a gap. Just a few inches, but I could see outside. I brought out my phone and used what little battery I had left to turn on the flashlight. I could see a concrete floor with splotches of blood. Further in, there was a chunk of flesh, or possibly skin. Broken planks littered the ground. With the wall of the box broken, the vinegar-soaked insulation gave way. There was a stench of blood so powerful I could taste the iron on my tongue. Moist, warm flesh. I tried not to think about it. I kept kicking. And as I did, the door opened again.
Was that you, birthday girl?
A voice called out.
Did you open your...
The footsteps stopped. Then he started running.
No!
He complained.
No, 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 no!
I kept kicking, and with one final push, the entire side of the box fell away. I could only see parts of him. He had a flashlight, but I couldn't see what he pointed it at. It was like looking at him through a wooden frame. A man in his 50s, malnourished, with sunken eyes and thinning hair hidden under a green baseball cap. But he didn't look at me. He looked at something in the center of the room. Something big and groaning.
I didn't open your present,
he said.
It broke. I'll get you another one.
There was a loud puff, like an exhale. The man shook his head and carefully stepped forward. He held his hands open in surrender.
I love you, birthday girl. I love you. It's your favorite, I made sure. They have that date you like.
He moved out of sight. There was a thump as something came down next to him. Something wet that stretched across the floor. Something pulsating, throbbing.
You want me to put the present in a new box?
He asked.
You want something else? Roast chicken? Sunflower seeds? I know you love the blue ones.
There was a sudden shift as something large moved. I could hear him fall to the floor, bowled over like a pigeon hit by a truck. There was a newfound fear in his voice. His flashlight disappeared, turning the room as dark as a grave.
Honey,
he wheezed.
I'll get you a new one. You'll get a new present. I'll...
Another thump, followed by a piercing shriek. Whatever was out there was making itself busy with my assailant. This was my chance. I crawled out of the box. I almost slipped on the blood, but I managed to steady myself. I didn't turn to look. I didn't do anything but to listen to all the little voices in my head, now in complete unison. Run. He begged her to stop. He screamed and pleaded, but nothing changed. I heard bones snapping and tendons tear. The sound of those big teeth biting into a ripe apple. And as his panic gave way to maddening acceptance, he started laughing. He laughed like I'd never heard anyone laugh before.
This day will be all yours but birthday girl. No one else can have your birthday. No one else. No one!
but I didn't stop, and I didn't look. And as his laughter came to a crunching stop, I burst through the metal door. I scrambled up a spiral staircase, and as I collapsed into an old, abandoned tobacco field, I made a 911 call so frantic I can't remember a word of what I said. As my phone finally died, I was left on my own. Only a single voice remained, whispering gently into the back of my mind. I made it. I made it out of the trunk. Well, that was a few years ago. I was the third kidnapping victim of this man, and I was the only one who made it out. You might have read about it. It wasn't too far from Greenbrier Valley. It was a big deal for about a week. I'm bringing this up now because the investigation has been in a standstill for years. They've determined that he acted alone and that he worked as a consultant at a local law office. He had access to a lot of confidential information. That's how he picked his victims. The first victim, which I never met, also shared our birthday. There's a lot of strange things going on surrounding this. They worked on the initial report for days, but when it was finalized, it barely said anything but nothing to report. Strange how it can take days of investigation to come to that conclusion, especially considering what they must have seen when they first entered that old storage cellar. The case is officially closed, but I know there's more to it. But for now, I'm just happy to be out of the trunk. For good.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bump in the night. On tonight's episode, a woman working at a diner is visited by a stranger with a dark secret. So, where are you from? Because Samuel came from a strange place.
Back in 2016, I was working at a roadside diner west of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Neat little place, had a bit of a 60s vibe to it, but without the hairdo. On the slow hours of the day, or whenever we just had locals around, I'd be humming along with the chefs playing radio out of the kitchen. It wasn't an exciting time, but it was nice to have a workplace that felt like a second home. A couple of weekends a month, we had an all-night crew to serve passing truckers. You usually never had to do more than one shift, though, and we got to make own schedules. Our boss was pretty hands-off. It was during one of those shifts at the first week of early summer that my life took a turn for the worse, and I didn't even realize it. We were used to having the occasional odd customer during those hours of the day. When this guy walked in, I didn't know what to think. He was about 6'2", bald and pale as chalk. He wore this worn-out t-shirt that looked like it had been on fire. With every step, he dragged his feet and collapsed in one of our booths, seemingly exhausted. I looked back at the chef, and he just shrugged. Guy wasn't hurting anyone, but he didn't look like he was all there. But a job's a job, so I went up to him. "You all right there?" I asked. He looked up at me like I was speaking a foreign language, then sunk his head back down, gently shaking it.
Nah,
he said.
I don't think I am.
He had this voice on the knife's edge between a hysterical laugh and a howling cry. He was trembling. "You need me to call someone?"
Call?
"Yeah, call someone."
How?
I didn't understand the question. I figured he was coming down from some kind of binge, and I wasn't about to take any chances. I asked the chef to get me a side of bacon to keep the guy calm while I called the police. As I slid the plate over to him, he sunk his face into his hands, sobbing.
Thank you.
He cried.
Please.
I sat down across from him, instinctively reaching out to grab his hand. He let me. Even at a light touch, I could feel the scars on his palm and fingertips. Whatever had happened to him, it must have been awful.
I can't go back.
He sniffled.
Don't make me go back. I can't. Please, I can't.
"You're not going anywhere. It's okay." I smiled. "You're safe here."
Can you help me?
He asked.
Can you keep him out?
"I'm sure we can figure it out." I nodded. "Just eat up. It's okay." His fingers trembled as he tentatively bit off a piece of bacon. His teeth were black and he flinched.
I need time.
He said.
I need time to run.
Don't worry, I assured him. We've called for help.
I just need time.
We just sat there for a while. He calmed his breathing but kept staring out the window. I could tell he was looking for something, or someone. All I could see was a road and a handful of moths. We sat there for some time in silence as he carefully nibbled on the slices of maple bacon. As two police officers entered the diner, he got up from his seat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle of scrunched up trash. A couple of singles, a plastic card, dirt, and something resembling animal bones. He tried to straighten out the bills, pushing them into my hands along with the laminated card.
I need time. I'll come back. Please.
I didn't understand. I just nodded and accepted it. Seconds later, the officers asked him to step outside and explain the situation. I got busy taking orders from a couple of passing truckers, watching glimpses of the scene through the window. A couple of minutes later, the strange man was taken away. My shift ended at sunrise. I dragged myself to my car with a yawn, shuffling around my pockets for the keys. I hadn't thought much about the items he'd handed me, but I took a closer look. I'd thrown away the animal bones and dirt, but there were a couple of dollar bills and that laminated card left. I checked the card first. It looked like some kind of bookmark. On one side, it was completely white, and on the other side, there were dried blue flower petals arranged in a spiral. Kind of reminded me of a sunflower. And finally, there were the dollar bills. I didn't pay much attention to these at first. Just a couple of singles. But after a closer look, I noticed something unusual. There was a man on the bill that I didn't recognize. It took me a couple of Google searches to realize that this man was Walter Mondale, the man who'd lost to Ronald Reagan's second run for president back in '84. Why was this man on a $1 bill? Before heading to bed, I put the items down on my nightstand. In a moment of silent wonder, I looked out the window. What had that man been looking for? What had he been running from? There was nothing out there, just a couple of moths. Waking up the next morning, I had a full day off. I spent it cleaning my apartment, watching movies, having dinner with a couple of friends, and ending the night with a couple of drinks at the pub down on the corner. No binge or anything, just got a bit boozy. I was still gonna be in bed by midnight. I took the scenic route home. A long walk. All the way down Main Street, past the lake. I took a shortcut through the park by the final stretch, speeding up a bit. That place was trouble. As I hurried by the fountain, I spotted someone in the distance, a shrouded figure at the edge of the streetlights. I stopped to observe for a second, but as I did, the lights flickered. Coming back on, the figure was gone. I chalked it up to imagination. I was a bit drunk after all. Besides, it was small, like a child. What the hell would a kid be doing out at this hour? A couple of days passed. I didn't notice anything unusual, but I kept coming back to that distressing feeling of missing something important. Looking back at it now, I just feel dumb. He was there all along, outside the supermarket, in the parking lot, off the highway. Hell, he was outside my window at night sometimes, but just too short for me to spot. I'm getting ahead of myself. It wasn't until one morning when I was driving to work that I got a clear view of him. I was crossing a four-way street, taking a sharp left turn, when I had to throw myself on the brakes. There was a kid in the middle of the street. I hadn't seen him that clearly before. He was probably around 6, maybe 7 years old. Wearing a plain black shirt and a pair of light blue canvas pants. Short black hair, dark eyes, and no shoes. That particular detail stuck with me. No shoes? Why? I almost lost control, but I was lucky. There wasn't much traffic, and I managed to stop further down the road. There were black lines in the pavement from my screeching tires swerving back and forth. Regaining my composure, I looked in the rearview mirror. The kid was gone. But that was just the start. I'd spot him every now and then. Looking out the window at work, at the gas station. A passing face in the crowd when shopping for groceries. Every now and then, something would pull on my attention, forcing me to whip my head around, looking for the source of that ill feeling crawling up my spine. Sometimes I saw him. And even worse, sometimes I didn't. I remember lying awake at night, hearing moths tap against my window. There was nothing else. Nothing outside. I patrolled my apartment 6 times, checking every window. I'd looked everywhere, and there was no reason for me to feel the way I did. I was growing paranoid. And yet, in the morning, my front door was unlocked and slightly open. It all came to a head one afternoon when I was out on my smoke break. I'd barely slept for the past 3 nights, and you could kind of tell I was having a bad day. As I stood there leaning against the side door of the diner, I see the kid again. This time just across the road, maybe 50 feet or so away. I'd had enough. This had to end. I was furious. I stormed forward, calling him out with every slur and curse I could think of. I was psyching myself up. I was in the right, and I refused to be harassed anymore, kid or not. Didn't matter. I crossed the road, barely dodging a speeding Jeep, and met him face to face. "What the hell do you want?" I'd yell. "Why are you following me?" He was completely expressionless. He didn't even flinch, no matter how much I pointed or screamed. I snapped my fingers in front of his eyes, and he didn't even blink. He just stared at me, like a porcelain doll head on a swivel. I wasn't thinking about the bystanders, though. A couple of middle-aged men stepped up, asking in no kind terms what the hell was wrong with me. I was held back and restrained. Someone called the police. Someone else called my manager. I'd forgotten to take off my apron so they could see the diner logo. A couple of people filmed it. One of the videos got like 120,000 views in a day before it fell off the map. I still see it as a react gif sometimes. It was a disaster. After a couple of officers came by to talk to me, he'd just disappeared into thin air. The officers took me down to the station. Not to detain me, but to get me away from the heated crowd. That car ride downtown sobered me up to what the hell was going on. I was being stalked by this kid, but there wasn't a living soul out there that would believe me. Well, maybe one. Maybe. I was asked a couple of questions and released within about half an hour. They told me to go home and sleep this whole thing off. That wouldn't be a problem. I didn't have a job to go back to anyway, according to the many texts I'd gotten. I had all the goddamn time in the world. I was just about to leave when something came to mind. The 2 officers who'd picked me up were still waiting by their car when I turned back to them. "Sorry, you picked up the guy I called in about at the diner, right?" I asked.
Sure did.
"You got any idea what happened to him?" The 2 looked at one another for a moment, shrugged, and turned to me.
Didn't have any ID and gave a fake name. I think they took him to psych.
Psych?
Well, he was saying some, strange things. There were interviews with
The 2 quieted down and flashed me a smile.
There's not that much we can say.
Coming home, I decided to get to the root of this. It didn't take me that long to find the place where the guy'd been taken. There aren't a lot of mental health facilities in this part of the country, especially facilities that accept involuntary subjects. But my eyes kept drifting back to the strange dollar bills he'd given me, resting neatly on my nightstand. They were so detailed. A bit old, sure, but that only made them seem more genuine. What the hell was he doing with a handful of clearly fake dollar bills? Like, what's the purpose? There had to be a purpose. That unnerved me. I managed to arrange a meeting. It wasn't easy, and I think a lot of it boiled down to the police having no idea what could make this guy talk. For some reason, he kept providing them with false information. Maybe a familiar face, for one reason or another, might make him talk. Just a couple of days later, I was putting my items in a metal bowl on the 2nd floor at a mental health institute in the next town over. I asked one of the nurses if I could keep one of my dollar bills. Apparently, that was okay. I was shuffled through a couple of locked doors and escorted to an off-white side room. No decor, no locks. The guy was already there. He'd been dressed down into these neutral eggshell white garbs. It was strange seeing him in a lit-up room like this. I didn't know what to expect. Getting a closer look at him, he was probably in his 50s. It had been hard to tell earlier. I couldn't get over just how pale he was. It was almost a complete lack of pigment. It looked sickly. His thin arms didn't help. He looked malnourished. And yet, he was smiling.
Hello?
He said. Hello to you too. I smiled. You doing okay?
I'm pretty good.
He nodded.
Thank you.
I sat down across from him and took out the dollar bill he'd given me. I wanted to ask you about this,
For the bacon.
he said matter-of-factly. Excuse me?
Sorry, was that not enough?
No, it's... I took a moment to compose myself. I had too many questions. He sighed, took the bill, and looked it over. Looking back at me, I could tell there was something painful stirring in his mind. His smile slowly faded.
Sorry.
He said.
I try to forget sometimes. It's easier than making sense of it.
Let's start with something simple. I nodded. Like, your name. Where you're from.
Those things are pretty far from simple.
He was looking straight through me, his eyes sinking back to deeper, more uncomfortable thoughts. His name was Samuel, and he was born around these parts and back in the 1970s. He'd worked as a telecommunications specialist out of St. Cloud back in the 90s. He had a wife, 3 children, and a 4-bedroom house.
But that was all before, see?
He explained.
Then it all just...
Just what? I asked. What happened? He looked at me, opening and closing his mouth, looking for the right words to come out. Nothing happened. He shook his head, trying again.
It started with the street preachers.
He said.
Hundreds of them, marching on every city, all saying the same doomsday shit as always. World was dying, all coming to an end.
I haven't seen anything like that.
Then there were storms.
He continued without skipping a beat.
Some would last for weeks, others longer. Entire cities would be flooded or torn apart. Earthquakes causing monster waves along the east coast, sending shockwaves all the way to mainland Europe. Then, Yellowstone.
Yellowstone?
Yeah.
He nodded.
Lights out.
Samuel was painting this apocalyptic vision of a world undone. Catastrophe after catastrophe. Hooded people marching the streets, screaming for the mercy of a mad god. But there was more to it.
Then things stopped making sense. It's as if the rules changed.
He continued.
Roads would stop leading home. Trees would change color. People turned twisted and corrupted. Like one of our neighbors couldn't eat anything but gunpowder. There was a woman just down the street who tried to kill anyone wearing glasses. It was pandemonium.
I didn't say anything. What he was saying didn't make any sense, but he was trying his best to keep his rambling coherent.
The plants died. Trees, too. The only thing that could grow in that environment were these twisted blue things that popped up out of nowhere. But people are what got twisted the most.
He told me of these towering, 7-foot-tall humanoid creatures that roamed the forests. Black as night, not even reflecting light. Arms reaching all the way to their knees. Elongated, inhuman things that all used to be someone he knew.
The doomsayers all said the same thing.
He continued.
That God was a scared little boy, and that he was dying. Everything that was happening was just an expression of that ceaseless, bottomless, existential grief.
Samuel looked back and forth, finally burying his face in his hands.
It all broke down. Roads stopped leading anywhere. No power, no water. Julie changed. Ollie changed. Toby made himself a mask and wandered off into the woods. Ira just disappeared. And for years, has it been years? It's just been me.
But you're here now, I said. And what you're describing, it didn't happen.
It happened.
He insisted.
Just not here, but here.
He tapped his finger on the single dollar bill.
Somewhere, somehow, I must have taken a wrong turn. I slipped through something broken and now I'm here. And he's coming to bring me back. He doesn't want anyone to leave.
Who?
Just...
He chuckled.
Just a sad little boy who's been told he's going to die.
I didn't know what to say. I just sat with him for a while, holding his hand. Before I left, Samuel got up from his chair. He looked at me, forcing himself to smile.
If I go back, I'll try not to be like them. I'll try, and I'll be the one to say something.
He let out a painful little laugh, shaking his head.
Maybe just a hello.
I left that day with more questions than answers. I couldn't picture the world he'd lived through. Then again, how could it be true? None of it had happened. But what was he gaining from lying about it? That was the last time I saw Samuel. A few days later, he went missing, as if he'd disappeared into thin air. I didn't know what to think of it. There was nothing on the cameras. No one entering or leaving the building. No quick escapes, no clever plans. He'd just walked into his room and disappeared. Nothing left but a couple of moths fluttering about. And for a while, that was it. That was the end of the story. I got busy looking for a new job, and all the little items given to me by Samuel was put away into a little box in my glove compartment. Life soldiered on, and no matter how many questions I had, there was no one around to answer them. Even the strange kid that had been following me was, seemingly, gone. A couple of months later, I was driving home from a friend's place. I stopped at a four-way street, waiting for a couple of trucks to pass, when there was a knock on the passenger side window. I almost choked on my own spit. Scared me half to death. Looking out, I could see that kid again. I hadn't seen him for some time, and I quickly bounced between curiosity and downright anger. "What do you want?" I yelled out. There was no response. Instead, the door just opened. It had been locked. As he opened the door, he pointed to the glove box. "You want his things?" I asked. "Is that it?" He nodded. I wanted to lash out, but there was something telling me I shouldn't. Instead, I reached over, opened the glove compartment, and pointed to the box. "Just take it and leave me alone," I said. "Get it over with." He reached in and grabbed the box. So much effort for a couple of mementos. I turned my head back to face the road. The kid backed out. But of course I had to get the last word in. "Not even a thank you, huh?" That made him pause. He looked at me, tilting his head. As he opened his mouth to speak, a moth fluttered out. Then another. And another. Then darkness. What happened next is hard to describe. My memory of it is fragmented. It's like trying to watch a buffering video, where long stretches of it are just nothing. But you know something was supposed to happen in between. Blink. I was sitting in my car. There was a dark blue sky. No clouds, no stars. Figures in the distance. An open field with blue flowers bending to a howling wind. A powerful stench of ammonia stinging my nostrils. Something to my immediate left, ripping the car door straight off the hinges. Blink. Running. Ruins of a town. It seemed familiar, but there was barely anything left. My leg was bleeding. I was being followed. No matter where I turned or where I ran, I seemed to end up at the same intersection. Blink. A 3-story building brimming with life. Glimpses of arm-long antennae through the broken windows. Clickety-clack of bursting wings tapping against crumbling concrete. A loud warning shriek as something rubs its legs together. A call for prey. Blink. Hiding in a tipped-over trash container. The rain has stopped in midair. Raindrops held in indefinite suspension. I suck water drops out of the air to quench my thirst. My hands are shaking from the blood loss. Countless little images. Some in order, some not. I have no idea how much time passed. In the moment, it must have been much longer than I can remember. Days. Weeks, even. There's no way to tell. Blink. Walking through a barren field. It feels like walking through a dead forest, but there are no trees. Only those willingly impaled and wailing. Blink, an abandoned booth by a broken highway. A sign offers phone calls in exchange for real teeth. There are 6 sizes of pliers hanging on a wall within. All are bloodied, even the small ones. Blink. The church that had burned down the night before had reappeared. The people inside, too. They couldn't leave. Tonight, they would burn again. Somewhere in this nightmarish puzzle-pieced fragment of nothing, there was a constant drive in me to get away, to get out. I knew that if I'd gotten there, I could get back home again. I just had no idea how. Maybe finding the kid, asking, begging, something. The last fragment of memory from that space was being cornered in a cellar. They were banging on the door. I tipped over a wardrobe to keep them out, but they weren't going to stop. They were never going to stop. I couldn't let them kill me again. Not like that. One of the changed ones were coming. I don't know what that means, or how I know the name, but I knew of it. There was a mirror, and I could see the signs. It stepped out. 7 feet tall, black as night. Elongated arms and neck. Barely a body at all. Just a void space vaguely shaped like the remnants of a person. Except this one felt familiar. It was the first one to speak.
Hello.
Blink. Running. A cold hand. If I squeezed too hard, my fingers went straight through it. I had to keep up. He was showing me something. Blink. They were flooding over the school bus, tipping it by their sheer numbers. Eruptions from the sewer grates. They were famished. Blink. An open field. Sunflowers facing me no matter where I turn. It's not far. Blink. I look back as I'm pushed over the edge. He looks just like the rest of them. They aren't angered by his betrayal. They feel nothing, as I fall. In February of 2017, I was found by the side of the road. I'd been gone for months. My car was too. I came back with nothing but the clothes on my back and countless scars. I've been told that I didn't make any sense at first. I was just rambling nonsense. Or maybe it just sounded like nonsense to these people. Over time, I forgot more and more of these fragmented images, and the less I remember, the more I can move on. Still, I've written them down over time, and they paint an ugly, insane picture of what I'd been going through. Some of which I, myself, have a hard time believing. Then again, I know myself well enough to see that there's no point in lying. I haven't seen Samuel, or that strange kid ever since. I think this is all over for now. There's nothing left for me to give. But even now, years later, I still wake up to that feeling at night. That there's something wrong, or that I'm forgetting something. That there's something near that I'm looking straight through or past. And every now and then I hear the flutter of a moth's wing tapping against my bedroom window. And I think I know what it wants. It wants me to go back.
And welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a woman seems to feel like she's in the wrong body. So, are you having an identity crisis? Because I was supposed to be someone else.
Not too long ago, a friend set me up with a blind date. A handsome guy, but he probably spent more time on his hair than I did. He seemed pleasant enough, so I introduced myself and sat down next to him. He laughed and shook his head.
I pictured you differently.
He admitted.
I mean, you're beautiful, but I thought you'd be...
Strawberry blonde? I interrupted. A bit shorter, freckled, with deep dimpled cheeks. He stopped laughing, but kept a frozen smile. He didn't know what to say. I just stared at him. I knew this was going to happen, so why did I ever think this time it'd be different? Was that it? I pushed. Was that what you pictured? I didn't even notice that I'd raised my voice. The date was already over, as I started screaming at him. Was that what you goddamned pictured? I had already screwed up. At that point, all I could do was lean into it. Let me explain. This has been the story of my life. People remember me wrong. They picture me wrong. Even my own parents could swear that I used to be strawberry blonde as a kid. There isn't a single picture of me with that hair color. I don't have freckles or deep dimples that make my cheeks puff up. I'm tall, with ink black hair. I got my Mediterranean features from my Italian mom, and that doesn't allow for a lot of cutesy freckles. Still, every person I've met remembers me that way. Sometimes, when we haven't met for a while, they barely recognize me. One of the most common questions I get is whether or not I've done something with my hair. It is really frustrating whenever I have to show my ID, as people just seem hesitant to accept the way I look to be the real me. And yes, I've tried leaning into it. Changing my hair color, even putting on freckles with a makeup pen. It doesn't help. It still just looks kind of off. The weird thing is, sometimes I even trick myself. Some mornings, I don't recognize my own mirror image. For a split second, like a bump in the night, I'm staring at a stranger. I've talked to a therapist about possibly having some sort of depersonalization disorder, but that just isn't it. The problem isn't just me not recognizing myself, it is no one else recognizing me either. This is why I've come to an uncomfortable conclusion. Maybe I was supposed to be someone else. This has been my reality for as long as I can remember. Every date, every party, every picture day at school. Every single time someone asks me what I've done with my hair, or that they like my new makeup, all these little hints and pokes. It adds up over time. Maybe you can see why I'm a bit sensitive and might lash out at, say, a blind date. But something strange happened that one night. As I stormed off, I took a long walk by the downtown park area. There were a lot of people out and about, but I was all up in my head about overreacting. I thought about ways I could have handled it differently, or that I just had to, I don't know, start taking some kind of medication. Any kind. Whatever kind stops this. That's when I first noticed Daniel. It was this strange feeling. He was standing outside of a taco truck, talking to a group of friends. He didn't seem to stand out in any particular way, but I couldn't take my eyes off of him. He had this strawberry blonde hair, pale skin, and freckles. Deep dimples that made his cheeks look bigger. He was shorter than his friends, but he just radiated this joy. I can't explain it. It feels like I could probably draw it as a picture, but I can't explain it with words. I had to talk to him. I walked up to him, past his friends, and tapped him on his shoulder. As he turned around, my mind cramped. He wasn't strawberry blonde, freckled, dimpled, or pale. He was Korean, sort of lumpy looking, and in complete shock. So were his friends. Still, he looked at me like he recognized me. There was something there, and neither of us could say what it was. We both laughed. How did you... We said it at the same time, mirroring each other's expressions. We both laughed again.
Did you see...
Again, at the same time. His friends were laughing now as well. Jinx! They yelled at us. Jinx! Jinx! I had a long conversation with Daniel that night, and we got to know each other. Turns out we were both born on the same day, but that was where our similarities ended. We'd gone to completely different schools, in different parts of the country, and we both had the same problem. People mistook us for someone else, remembered us wrong. It was even more abrupt for him, not even matching the body shape of the image people thought he was. His friends eventually grew tired of us and left. Daniel and I sat there in the park, talking long into the night. We complained about the way people talked about us, how we never really felt like someone saw us, how this weird, stupid quirk was the one defining thing about what it meant to be us. When we finally parted ways, we friended each other and promised to speak again. We did. A lot. Over the next few weeks, we talked every day. I couldn't help myself still mentally picturing him as someone else, like a brain teaser. I thought about him as this thin, pale man with the same features that people thought I had. It bothered me, but this was exciting. I had never met anyone with the same problem as myself, and all of a sudden, it felt like maybe there wasn't that much wrong with me after all. Then the dreams came. I've always had lively dreams. I'm a very tactile person, so I remember the touch of something before I think of what it looks like. In the night, I could sometimes feel things that I swore I'd never felt before. Holding someone's hand with a hand that isn't mine. Feeling a breeze through someone else's hair. Tasting someone else's breath in your mouth. And the smell of birch trees reaching in through their nose. Like I was a passenger in another body. It would only last short moments and would interrupt whatever other dream I had to the point that I'd wake up. Often in a cold sweat, like my body was scared, even though my mind was calm. Daniel told me he experienced something similar. It was getting more intense. Ever since we met, whatever this problem was had been turned up to 11. We decided to meet and talk about it, for real. We met at the park, not too far from the taco truck where I first saw him. He brought me a milkshake. At first, I didn't even see him. I was expecting the strawberry blonde man that occupied my mind, not whoever this stranger in front of me was. I shook the thought out of my head, thinking he probably felt the same.
We should just go for it,
He said.
lean into it, see what happens.
What do you mean?
Like we do in the dreams.
I just looked at him. At first, I couldn't connect those thoughts to the person I saw in front of me. The more I thought about it, it felt like I could see through him. Like what he showed wasn't real, that there was a realer part of him that I recognized. The part that we all thought we truly saw, before the spell was broken. We raised our hands at the same time and held them against one another. For a split second, I was somewhere else. A meadow in a birch forest, late springtime. Morning dew was still setting on the blue sunflowers surrounding us. Standing next to someone I felt close to. Someone I felt safe with. A warm hand against mine, like we'd had 1,000 times before. And still, that uneasy feeling. I was still on the park bench. I dropped my milkshake.
Did you see that?
Daniel asked. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I did,
I think I know where that was.
he said.
I've been there.
We got to his car and drove away, following a smaller dirt road out of the city, the one down by the Frog Lake. Instead of turning back onto the main road, he followed a smaller road to the log cabins. We were going off-road, and still, I didn't mind. I felt safe. He knew this place better than me, and I had no idea why or how I would even know that. It was dark outside, but I knew he could get us there either way. We'd been here before. Not this Daniel, and not this me, but the real us. The road came to an abrupt end, and we got out. Daniel held my hand. There was an overgrown path in the forest, leading us deeper into the woods. Pine trees gave way to birch. The space between the trees tickled winds into pushing against us. For a moment, I was back. That springtime morning, hand in hand. Blue sunflowers, a symbol of things to come. We were siblings, and we were pure. Something touched my nose, and I snapped back to reality. A feather. Where did it even come from?
I don't even want to know anymore.
Sighed Daniel.
I really don't.
I think we have to, I said.
I know,
He nodded.
but still.
Yeah, still. Someone wanted us to go there. We had been told it'd be fine, that everything would work out. Someone had told us a lie, but I didn't know who or why. There, in the dark of the birch woods, I saw the outlines of sunflowers next to the overgrown path. What we were remembering was old, but no less real. My body was itching, telling me to stop. The milkshake wasn't settling in my stomach. All this had ever been was a mild inconvenience, and now it was literally controlling my life. But at least I wasn't alone, and I could feel something coming. Truth, perhaps. Harsh truth. We knew the meadow was just around the bend, but were no less awed when it came. The sky seemed more open. The sun we were remembering was replaced by a moon, and the white clouds had turned black. This was the place. This is where we'd been. For a moment, I didn't see Daniel. I saw my brother, smiling at me, talking to me, words reaching out to me, like spoken underwater.
I believe.
I didn't even notice him saying it out loud. The real him, the Daniel I'd gotten to know over the past few weeks. What? I said. What did you say?
I don't know.
He admitted.
I don't know why I said that.
What? What else do you want to say? We closed our eyes and spoke from a memory that wasn't our own. Song's eternal, I said. As before, as is now, as will be.
Don't say that.
I opened my eyes. Daniel was holding back tears, his face shaking.
Something bad happens. I feel it. We're doing something bad.
I could feel it too, like something crawling up my throat. I watched another white feather dance in the wind, blowing through the meadow. Daniel nodded at me and took a deep breath.
We have to keep going.
He said, closing his eyes. I know. You're my kin. My soul is true. A sun gone black. A moon gone blue. I ask you, Savior, through and through. If not the three of us, then who? As before, I said.
As is now.
Daniel continued. Then, quiet. There was supposed to be a third person. There had been a third person that day. She knew what would happen to us. We were the next generation to meet him, and no amount of promised eternity could convince her to surrender. Instead, there was a knife. She felled my brother first, then me. A knife bound for our hearts. The song remained unsung, tainting the land and every living thing within. A promise unkept, potential unraveled. A parted cloud, revealing the eye of a vengeful beast. Every bird in the meadow bursting open at the seams, their feathers falling like snow. I was there that day, watching my brother bleed out in the dried grass. The sun eclipsed in black. Our spilled blood burrowing into the ground, tainting it for generations. A dark pool puddling deep in the soil, cursing our cowardice. We could have been beautiful, all three of us. The sky had gone dark as the clouds hid the moon. Daniel screamed, only to suddenly stop. A part of me knew what was to come. There was a third person in that meadow, and they just killed Daniel. I couldn't see anything, but I had to run. I tripped on a rotting log and stepped into an anthill. The grass was so dry that I could hear the footsteps of someone approaching. Daniel was wheezing for air and then stopped. I'd heard it once before. As will be,
growled the third voice. As will fucking be.
Had it been another second, they would have gotten me. A memory of their fingertips grabbing my strawberry blonde hair flashed before my mind. The imagined pain of a knife between my shoulder blades shot through me. The blameless coward was making up for past mistakes, but it had cost me my life. A part of me was screaming with joy. A deep, evil part of me. The part that laid dying with the real Daniel. The other part of me was stepping out of an anthill and took off straight into the woods. It was a woman. She wasn't alone. Footsteps in the dark, joyous screams. People running, stumbling, falling and crying in the dark. A dozen of them at least. Some came close enough for me to hear their breaths, but it was pitch black. I figured they'd hear me if I kept running, so instead, I laid down. I hid next to a large rock. As the minutes passed, I heard them sweep the area, mistaking each other for me. Someone screamed in pain, another screamed in joy. Someone was silenced by a crunching sound as teeth sunk into flesh. Madmen in the dark, whooping and shouting, begging for my death, for their release, asking me to give up and die. I covered my ears and prayed for dawn. My pulse raced so fast, I could barely hear the individual beats anymore. I held my breath until I almost passed out. It felt like an eternity, but my panicked lizard mind refused to let me out of the moment. I couldn't even count the seconds. I just waited, moment by moment, for the nightmare to end. In an instant, or an eternity, came dawn. It worked. I don't know how, but it did. I had twisted my ankle without even noticing, but come the dawn, I could barely walk. There was still morning dew in the air, and a couple of blue sunflowers looked my way. I found no trace of Daniel's body, and when I called the police, there wasn't much they could do. They did ask me many questions about this supposed third person, and there was plenty of physical evidence for a group of people in the area, but nothing definite. People rarely fish down at Frog Lake anymore, And most people who live in that area are weird loners. This far into the woods, no one can hear you scream. We could be combing the forest for days without finding a speck of blood. The investigation is kept under wraps. No one has talked to me about it, and no one seems to be asking about Daniel anymore. And me? Well, people don't mistake me for that strawberry blonde girl anymore. I think she died in that field next to her brother. Maybe now my life can truly be my own. I think I'll be okay.